Hello, everyone, and welcome to our June Shotsuki monthly memorial and adult Dharma service. Today, I would like to begin by reading the names of those who've passed away in the month of June. Jimmy Akaba, Mary Aochi, Stanley Aochi, Yasukichi Aochi, Nobuko Yoshida Coleman, Hisai Deguchi, Haruno Egashiro, Yasaburo Egashiro, Norma Sutton Fujikawa, Melody Fujimori, Higashi Fukawa, Matsu Fukuchi, Kanae Fukutomi, Takeshi Furuta, Peng Kyang Go, Masai Goto, Satoru Harada, Natsuko Harano, Kameo Hatakeyama, Harriet Hayashida, Yoshiko Hiyama, Kyoko Hori, Mitsue Hurlbert, Shintaro Imazu, Takeo Inoue, Akio Isono, Kaz Izumi, Toshiko Kamada, Evelyn Kanada, Masai Kanagaki, Tsugio Kato, Henry Kawai, Ruby Kawamoto, George Kido, Take Kido, Mitsunori Komure, Mitsuru Kurotori, Takeshi Kusano, Mitsugi Maneki, Dorothy Matsui, Tsunejiro Matsutani, Yoshiharu Matsutani, Harue Minamoto, Misao Miyamoto, Tomie Miyamoto, Tama Miyazaki, Hatsue Mori, Katsuko Mori, Kinue Mori, Shoroku Morikawa, Tane Morikawa, Bert Morinaka, Kinuko Morinaka, Genkichi Mukuno, Riki Nagaki, Aki Naito, Saki Nakagawa, Sakai Nakaguma, Hanako Nakamura, James Nakamura, Don Nakano, Janice Nakao, Shoichi Nakao, Tami Nakao, Juhei Nakashima, Juso Nakashima, Sakai Nakazono, Brian Neishi, Julia Neishi, Kikuyo Neishi, Michiko Neishi, Suzanne Neishi, Sai Nishimura, Kyuji Obayashi, George Ochikubo, Suga Ogawa, Asai Okai, Yunosuke Okai, Richard Okano, Ken Okamura, Suehachi Omura, Noboru Ono, Rose Ono, Karen Otsuka, Kazuyo Sakai, Sanemon Sasajima, Nobuyuki Sasaki, Miyoko Satake, Tomie Satake, Kenji Sato, Bunjiro Shigematsu, Risuke Shiozaki, Kikue Suda, Koto Suyama, Noboru Takagaki, George Tomori, Sada Tanabe, Nancy Tanaka, Hisayo Taniguchi, Kiyoshi Taniguchi, Ben Tanisawa, Tome Tanisawa, Tomoe Tatai, Yaeko Teramae, Itsue Tsuchida, Harold Tsujimoto, Kiku Tsushima, Kimiko Tsushima, Kumaichi Tsushima, Teruko Tsutakawa, Benjamin Wakabayashi, Hakuzo Watanabe, Takeo Yago, Fukutaro Yamamoto, Hamako Yamanashi, Koraku Yamane, Roy Yamane, Yoshio Yamato, Matsutaro Yamashita, Hatsutaro Yoshisato, Kumekichi Yoshiura. Next, we will have sutra chanting, and today we will be chanting Juseige, and the words will appear on the screen. Namanda, 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 namanda. Gagon chosegan hishimu jodo shigan fumanzok seifu joshogak gaomunyoko fuidai seshu Fusai shopping, seifu joshogak,
がし成仏道妙正長実法苦境未消門政府上昇学利欲人少年上映主凡業しぐむ浄土一生天人師人力現代公不正無才道少女三苦妙交際主役難海一営言滅死根門案閉塞小悪道通達全宗門高僧上満足異様の実法日月主寿期天候音符言一種解放像公正苦毒法上大集中説法四式供養一切仏具足主徳本元年出上満徳意三害用如仏無下地通達未不詳願学営力投資最小損志願や国家大戦を感動国書天人東鎮妙見ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブ願にしくどく平等性祭道本菩提心往生安楽国ナマンダナマンダナマンダナマンダナマンダ。
Well, thank you once again for joining us for our Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorial service and adult Dharma service. Today, I want to talk about a movie that I saw recently, but it's a pretty old movie, 30 years old, in fact. The 30th anniversary is this year. Forrest Gump. This is a movie that I never saw. I didn't see it when it came out. I guess it came out in 1994. So I was out of college, hadn't moved out here yet. I didn't see a whole lot of movies back then, I don't think. And so I missed it when it came out first and never really watched it on video or streaming or anything like that. And then finally, I know why. We went to Pier 39 in San Francisco about a month ago. Someone took us out for lunch and noticed Bubba Gump Shrimp Company or whatever it's called, right? This is a restaurant called Bubba Gump's or Bubba Gump. And thought, okay, that's interesting. You know, what's all this about? And realized, it's related to that movie, Forrest Gump. Guess I better watch it. And so never having seen it, it was pretty interesting. And I'm not going to give a lot away. There's a lot of kind of quotable phrases from the movie. One that maybe is the most famous, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. I'm not even going to try to do the accent. Do a kind of a impression of Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump. But that's one of them, right? Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Another one that pops into my head is "Run, Forrest, Run," which has related to the plot line of the movie. But the one that really hit me, I liked the movie. It didn't blow me away. I was impressed with the effects. Nowadays it's nothing, right? You can use AI and make anything. But back then, 30 years ago, the way they incorporate Tom Hanks as Forrest Gump into this historical footage, I think is pretty amazing. And, had me questioning. I finally looked up online, not so much how they did it, but related to, how much did they manipulate the footage besides putting in Forrest Gump. And I didn't really figure it out so much, but it was interesting to see how it's definitely bending history here and there, and historically maybe things don't quite line up, but it's just fun to watch, right? It's kind of a fun movie. It's moving by the end. I mean, it's partially comedy, but a lot of it is really deep too. And the Vietnam War is part of this film. And so it is moving, very moving to me in certain spots, but especially towards the end. And I want to share this phrase. And this is when I realized, I could do a Dharma talk on this. So here's what he says towards the end of the film. And it's not really a spoiler, so I think it's okay if you haven't seen it. I don't know if we each have a destiny or if we're all just floating around accidental-like on a breeze. But I think maybe it's both. Maybe both is happening at the same time. So, one is destiny. Was this destined to happen? Did the things in my life, were they destined to happen? Or is it like floating around like a feather on the breeze? In which case it's just chance, right? Pure chance versus already determined, predetermined, destined. And I kind of like his answer, right? Maybe it's both, right? In some sense, we're at the whim of history and the circumstances around us. But in another sense, sometimes it seems like maybe that was supposed to happen, right? Maybe this was meant to happen. And so, as a Buddhist, what do I think, right? And so what's kind of the Buddhist take on this? And I think one way to think about it is, I think it's kind of in the middle. That's why I like the both answer. In one sense, I think that Buddhism doesn't really accept destiny, as in things are already predetermined. Buddhism, to me, always has this idea that our actions can change things. But at the same time, those actions, which we might want to call karma, right? Karma just literally is basically cause and effect, but that causes have results. Things that we do have results and bring about these effects at some point. And those karmic chains, bonds, right? That sometimes that can seem like destiny. I think it can be very, very hard to break out of those karmic bonds. So what am I talking about? Here, I think karma can also be kind of understood as maybe even habit energy. And sometimes, people do things that annoy us, right? And then, so if somebody else, totally unrelated, might do the same thing that annoys me in person A, when person B does it, I get annoyed again. It's kind of like programming almost, right? And then how does that programming happen? So I think maybe we could think about nature versus nurture, right? In one sense, maybe a lot of what I do is related to my body chemistry, right? And just kind of how I'm wired as a human being. But in other parts, it's the nurture side, right? Of what happened to me as I was brought up, how I was raised, the experiences that I had, right? And I think a lot of that we can see as karmic. So that, if I want to talk about people annoying me, I can think of things that, like my father did, that annoyed me, and I think annoyed my mom too, right? And so when my dad would do something, that kind of triggers a response, right? And usually, I'm not realizing it. I'm just responding without awareness. Right? And so if he does something and it starts a fight, or thinking about my mom who passed away this month 24 years ago, there's plenty of things I'm sure I know that she did that bugged me. And as soon as it started happening, we just fall into the same routine. Right? And if I really think about it, and it's not easy, but I'm sure stuff that I did triggered reactions in her. And maybe that's part of why it can be hard to break out of those patterns, because when both of you are triggering each other, right, it sets up these patterns that can happen over and over. So in one sense, that can maybe look like destiny. We're stuck like this. And if we aren't aware of it, yeah, maybe we are. But Buddhism doesn't accept that things can't change. It might not be easy, but with awareness, becoming aware of these patterns, becoming aware of these triggers, maybe I can change my reaction. With the communication, it's not easy because a lot of this stuff develops over years, decades, right? And so it can be so fundamental to who we are that we don't even realize it's happening. But again, I think that's part of Buddhism, is to not be going through life mindlessly, but becoming aware of these patterns, these kind of programming, these karmic traits, maybe we could call them, right? Karmic responses, and begin to lessen their hold. Sometimes when we're stressed out, angry, frustrated, whatever, it's much easier to go off, right? To have that set off and not be so mindful. But I think that this, and I think it's also connected to relationships. We don't live in a vacuum, right? That we're always in society, whether it's our family or work or, wherever we are, even at home alone, we're still affected by what we see on TV or internet, right? That's all affecting us and all part of us. And so rather than be mindlessly triggered, right, or even manipulated sometimes, right? I think Buddhism wants us to have that awareness, to have that, we might call it mindfulness, right? To try and be aware. We can still react, and we might still react in the same way, and yet, with that awareness, even if I react in the same way, maybe a few minutes later I realize, wait, it happened again. What's going on? How come I'm always getting angry when this happens or whatever? And so, Forrest Gump, it's fiction, it's a story, and it has a lot of levels, I think, that I'm not even aware of yet, right? And I looked a little bit online for some, analysis of the film, and kind of interesting to see what it says about American society and American history, and at the time, the mid-90s, and kind of looking back on Vietnam and civil rights, and so it's actually, I think, probably a pretty interesting film worth thinking about. But it also has this kind of grand vision because it is a film, it's a movie, right? And so Forrest's statement, right? I don't know if we each have a destiny. Was I destined to become a minister? Right? Was I destined to be here now speaking to you? Or if we're just floating around, accidental like on a breeze? I don't think it was accidental that I'm here either. I don't think I was destined to be here, but it wasn't an accident either. Thinking back on my parents' life, I can see a kind of story unfolding in my parents' relationship and a kind of chance meeting at the hospital. I've told this story before, maybe real quick. My dad had a heart attack while he was working in Japan, went into a hospital where with like American doctors, and my mom was his nurse. So that chance meeting, right? And yet it developed into a relationship, which developed into my being born and developed into my life, right? And so my life is also interconnected so deeply with their lives. Friends that I met when I was going to high school in Japan, that was because of my parents, and their backgrounds. And then encountering Buddhism later in life, during college, right, was because of those relationships. So it wasn't an accident, even though in some ways I feel like I can look at a lot of it as kind of coincidental. But that's another thing I like about Buddhism, right? It's not just pure coincidence. Maybe we can see these connections, see these relationships, right, and see them flowering in this way, in my personal case. And so when I read the list of names at the beginning of the service, right, and so maybe you're watching this because you're here for someone's memorial, and each person on here has a story, right, and each person on here has relationships. I know some of these people are related to each other, right, for this month, but those connections, right, this life, and the temple, I think less so now than before, right? But the temple is one of the locus points for these relationships too. And that's what I like about our temple life in a way, right? That even though we're going on with our lives now, maybe very close to the temple and very involved, or maybe somewhat more distant, and yet here's one of those nodes, right? Here's one of those points where we can see these connections. And then in this other way, right, with these family relationships with people. And so hearing their names being read, bringing them to mind, thinking about them, thinking about the impact maybe that they had on you, right? Or even the impact, for me, I can think about the impact that they had on me. Even some of these people, I only know them through their name. They passed away maybe even before I was born. And yet, reading their name, hearing their name, hearing stories about them, right? And reflecting on my life, reflecting on all of these relationships. And so seeing maybe, in a way, it's like being a feather just floating on the breeze and going whichever way the wind takes us. And yet also not random, not coincidental, maybe not as far as destiny, but right, that there's meaning here in these connections and in these relationships. So I want to thank you very much for joining us for our June Shotsuki monthly memorial service and adult Dharma service. Why don't we conclude the Dharma message with Gassho? And I'll read this phrase from the film Forrest Gump. I don't know if we each have a destiny or if we're all just floating around accidental like on a breeze, but maybe it's both. Maybe both is happening at the same time. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda. Okay, thank you. Just a couple things on the horizon. We will be having our bazaar and food festival on June 15th. So that's the Saturday on Father's Day weekend. I think it starts at noon, and you can find advertisement and information on our website, Facebook, Instagram. And then the following Saturday, we're going to have an Intro to Buddhism class. So that's on June 22nd. We'll be advertising that more at Bazaar and afterwards. So those are the two main things. This is the last regular Sunday morning service that we'll be having in June. And we'll have another Shotsuki in July, I think the second weekend of July because of the 4th of July weekend. And then after that, it's Obon. So I don't want to rush us or anything, but, we're the summer's beginning here, it seems like. And so I hope you're having a nice beginning to the summer and hope you have a good summer and hope to see you soon. Why don't we conclude our service with Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda. Namanda.